In a surprise to absolutely no one, Nintendo is suing somebody. That's right. Nintendo files lawsuit of the makers of the open source Switch emulator, Yuzu. Nintendo blames Yuzu for pirated copies of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom being played early. Nintendo is suing them in a lawsuit filed in Rhode Island. A 41-page lawsuit. This is the company that makes Yuzu. Yuzu is a free emulator that was released in 2018, months after the Switch originally launched. Same folks make Sotera, a Nintendo 3DS emulator, made this one. It's a piece of software that lets people play Nintendo Switch games on Windows, PC, Linux, and Android. It also runs on Steam Deck. And so Nintendo argued that Yuzu executes codes that defeat Nintendo's security measures, including decryption using illegally obtained copy of product keys. I don't think that they should be able to shut down somebody that uses an emulator. Because if you buy the game, you should be able to do what you want with the game. Unless you're reproducing it and then selling it, which obviously competes against the company. I don't think that Nintendo, and I am talking about, like, by the way, I'm talking about shoulds, okay? So I'm not saying this is the way it is, but from my philosophy, that means nothing. I don't think that you should be able to shut down somebody emulating a video game as long as they paid for that game. If you've paid for the game, you've spent your money on that video game, you should be allowed to play it in a way that you think, in a way that you see and you think is fit for that game. And I think also, this is very important, is that unless you are playing it online, I think that if you're playing an online-only game, like Diablo 4, for example, or Valorant, then obviously the company has to take some level of precautions to protect against anti-cheat and just common sense stuff like that. But outside of those options, and for single-player games like Tears of the Kingdom, there is no functional reason that adds any value to the customer that making it to where you're not able to play on these other platforms. It's against their terms of service, but their terms of service are being upheld by the law. And whenever the terms of service is being upheld by the law, in my opinion, the terms of service has to be congruent with what is ethically acceptable. Because what you're really saying is that I can make any bullshit terms of service that you want and then make it legally enforceable. I don't give a fuck about the terms of service. Who cares? Why does anybody care about what the terms of service are? They have every right to shut down the emulator. They made the game. They made the console. Okay, so let's use some of this logic. Why do they have the right to shut down the game? Shut down the emulator. Why do they have it? Well, because it encourages people to buy the Switch. I think that that's true, because like what you're saying is like you're right that it does encourage people to buy the Switch. But I don't think that they should be able to legally enforce doing something that is consumer unfriendly. And I think that after you purchase the game, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. And I don't think that the customer has the obligation to like buy a Nintendo Switch just because they bought this game. I don't agree with that. So I see what you're saying is that it incentivizes people to buy the Nintendo Switch, but why are we making a legal system to encourage this behavior? I think this is extremely unfriendly to any consumer. You buy the game so you can do anything you want with it? Yeah, I basically think that. So this is what my perspective is with games. I think that after you buy a video game, you should have the autonomy to do whatever you want with that video game to the extent that that game doesn't, to the extent that that does not affect other players or negatively affect the company in a direct way of the purchase of that game. So, for example, like you can't buy a video game and then just copy it and then sell it again. Of course, nobody thinks that, right? Naturally. But at the same time, I also think that if you buy a video game, you should have the right to choose what you're going to do with that game and where you want to play it. And if you find a way to play it on another device, then I don't really see that as being a problem. I don't think that that's something that should be legally against the law. Emulator is the same thing. Now, here's really what the problem is is that a lot of the people that play with these emulators, maybe Yuzu isn't like this, but there are many emulators that people use and they don't actually buy the games and they don't pay for them. And they're basically being used as tools to pirate different games. That's really it. Like most of them, yes, probably most of people. I would say almost all people. I think that I do. I personally think it's most people that buy emulators don't purchase every single video game that they have on the emulator. I'm going to say it. It might be a hot take. That's what I fucking think, okay? So I do think that is the case. So, like, why is it okay for people to make an emulator? I'm not necessarily really sure. But again, this is just something, like, if you make a piece of software, do you own the right to tell other people that they can't even read or use your software unless you're using your own proprietary stuff? I think that that seems extremely fucking constraining. That is, like, massively fucking constraining. That's shitty gatekeeping. Yes, it's massively gatekeeping. It's heavy-handed. It is. I think you're correct whenever it comes to single player, but whenever it comes to multiplayer, it depends. You're totally right, and I'd totally change my perspective if you were talking about multiplayer. Yeah, you're right about that. They're blaming Yuzu for leaking Tears of the Kingdom. It has nothing to do with them. I think that they're using the Tears of the Kingdom instance in order to shut them down. I don't think that Nintendo is actually doing it because of Tears of the Kingdom. I think that they're using the Tears of the Kingdom thing that happened as a vehicle to shut them down, because they think that they have a stronger case for that versus just attacking them for being a baseline emulator. That's what would probably make the most sense to me. Because they've been around since what? They said 2018, and they just recently did it with Tears of the Kingdom? No, I think that's the reason. Yuzu wins this fight. Yeah, there could be a case where they're just trying to do this to shut them down. Because Yuzu apparently makes $30,000, is that right? Because it does say, yeah, there it is. $29,000 a month. $29,000 a month is a lot of money. But compare that to Nintendo. Also, there's more than one person working on this. So now you're talking about $15,000 a month. Okay, let's say you have 6 people working on this. Now it's only $5,000 a month. That money goes down really fast. Well, they got greedy as soon as they started getting paid. It was a problem. I don't think that it's a problem for people to expect to get compensated for doing something like this in some cases. But, like, it's weird because I do and I don't think that. Like, I really don't like how some people try to take mods and paywall them. I find that to be very obnoxious. But it also depends on, like, what they're really making money for. Like, are they really providing something that's unique, like with this early access stuff? Or is it just a thank you? That's basically it. Yuzu's free, by the way. Yeah, but early access isn't. And so there is actual value in purchasing a subscription here. Nintendo isn't concerned about Yuzu making money. They're concerned about them creating a conduit for which their games are pirated and they don't receive money. Yeah, I understand that. And I don't necessarily know how to solve that problem. But I do think that, like, on terms of, like, you know, on a principle basis, if you buy a video game and you want to run it on something that video game doesn't run it on, I think that you should have every right to be able to do that. I don't think that the developer or the manufacturer should have any right on how they tell you how you want to play their game that you paid your money for. I think that's outrageous. That's crazy to even think that. No, whenever you purchase something, that means something. You gave them $50 and you should get something out of that $50. A lot of people use these emulators to pirate things, and because they use these emulators to pirate things, I think that's why Nintendo is really trying to shut them down. Yeah, seeks damages for alleged violations of shutdown and a shutdown of the emulator. Yeah. 1 million copies of Tears of the Kingdom downloaded prior to the game's release. Says Yuzu's Patreon support doubled during that time. Basically argue that this is proof that Yuzu's big business model helps privacy flourish. Can we take ourselves off of the hate train for this and acknowledge that this is probably true? I think that, again, Nintendo does very clearly, there's a reason why they're going after this specific thing. I think that any reasonable person would see that somebody's income doubling at the same time that they're providing a tool that you can use to pirate something is clearly because they're making money off of the piracy. Defendant and its agents are fully aware of the use of Yuzu by others in performing circumvention, as in facilitating piracy at a colossal scale. So again, I've been shitting on Nintendo, but let's actually listen to what they're saying. Do you think that Yuzu knows that people circumvent the rules and use this tool to not have to pay for money or not have to pay for the games? Absolutely, they know that. Abso-fucking-lutely. And they know that and they're facilitating piracy. Absolutely. But it shouldn't matter. Does that matter? And here's the crazy thing, is that I don't know if it does. Because YouTube exists because of piracy. Let's take a look at it. Piracy, like, you know, he's showing content from a video game. Piracy, 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 piracy. Okay, so this is like the basically 1/3 of my YouTube front page is piracy. Fair use? No, a clip from something is not fair use. That's not how it works. Also, fair use is a legal defense. It is not proactive. But anyway, what I think about this in general is that, yeah, I think Nintendo does have some grounds to try to sue them. But unless they have more evidence than your numbers went up whenever Tears of the Kingdom was being pirated, and you actually have evidence that, like, they're supporting piracy directly, I don't think that they actually really have grounds to shut them down. I think that's fucking ridiculous. I think if you purchase a piece of software, you should have the autonomy to choose what you do with that piece of software, so long as that does not negatively affect future sales of that software. I don't think that the company should be able to legally enforce the way that you use that software in a very specific way in order for them to force sales of other products that they have. That is a massively consumer unfriendly practice. It doesn't help anyone other than the company, and it's just bad for everybody.